Hello again, everyone. Welcome to our read along, or maybe you've already been around. Thanks for joining us again for our next creator. And I want to tell you a little bit about what we're up to today and who we are before I let Inda introduce herself. We are the Story Sunbirds, a kidlit collective of authors and illustrators whose mission is to cultivate a dynamic and inclusive community rooted in justice, anti-racism, and anti-colonialism. Children are at the center of everything we do, including today, because 1 year ago, the children of Gaza held a press conference outside Al-Shifa Hospital. And perhaps you saw that online video. You can also check it out. I'm sure you can dig it up and find it. They were asking for an end to the war 1 year ago today. So we are taking part in Children's Days of Action, which a wonderful coalition of organizations put together to commemorate that event. And we're really honored to be part of that with Aida's idea of a read aloud. And so we have all of these amazing authors and illustrators joining us, including Inda, and this will go until 7 p.m. Eastern. There's a lineup in the chat. You can find us in the chat on Instagram, on Substack. We'll ask Inda to share her information later. I'll be sharing mine, which I should have in the last one. And also, we're here to raise money for Middle East Children's Alliance. I'll tell you about that a little bit later. But if you're able to give, you will be in the running for some incredible books, probably including Inda's. So over to you. Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Danielle. It's really nice to be here. Hi, everybody. My name is Inda Ahmad Zahri, and I'm actually calling in from Riyadh in the Middle East right now, but usually I'd be somewhere in Australia, but I'm originally from Malaysia, so I hop around a lot. And today, so I am a children's author and illustrator. I'm also a doctor. And I'm also a mom to 3 little children. So my daughter's 9, and I've got three-year-old twin boys. And the reason I bring that up is because they're right here on the cover of the book that I'm going to be reading to you today. So my book is called How to Measure the Ocean. It was published in Australia earlier this year at the end of May by Allen and Unwin, who's published 2 of my books so far. So I have 5 picture books out in the world at the moment. The last 2 are ones that I wrote and illustrated myself. So that's the other one there, The Month That Makes the Year. And then this is the one that we're going to be reading today. And this is my latest one called How to Measure the Ocean. I actually have I have the physical book right here, but in a second, I'll probably swap over and share my screen so that it's a little bit easier for me to kind of read things out. And then, instead of kind of like doing the whole thing, because I'm not kind of really good at that yet. But this book is basically about my love of the ocean. So I was once a very keen scuba diver. It's kind of hard to do when you've got little kids, in tow nowadays, but I used to go on trips that were just purely for scuba diving, and I absolutely loved it. I've always loved the ocean. I've always loved the beach, but when I was 25, I learned how to scuba dive, and I couldn't believe that I hadn't done this sooner. So you'll see some of my favorite underwater fishes in this book as well. And it's also about math and science because I'm a big old nerd and I'm really proud of it, but also about asking questions and different ways to look at things. And that comes back to my kids because I think once I grow up, it's really just having them around and their curiosity that kind of pulled me back into asking questions and trying to figure things out, even when the things that we're trying to figure out are really hard. So let's jump in. I'm gonna try and be really slick, maybe, and share my screen. Oh, there you go. Okay, so not so slick because I didn't start from the very beginning, but How to Measure the Ocean, and this is by me, published by Allen and Unwin. And those are my little kids. Just a little note about how art imitates life. I drew my daughter this way. She has very short hair now, but at that time she loved to kind of like leave 2 little strands of hair out from her ponytail. And then my little boys, one of them, the younger one and the cheekier one, I would say, insisted on wearing a hat wherever he went, even when he was indoors, even when he was about to go to bed, even in the bath. So that's why he always has a hat. And if you pay attention, something might happen to this hat later on in the story. So keep an eye on it. All right. So the ocean can be difficult to measure. You can't lift it onto scales to see how heavy it is. You can't tie a string around it to see how wide it grows. You might be able to scoop it up, cup by cup, but you need a very big bucket to calculate its volume. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You can work most things out once you know what you're measuring. Oceans are often easy to spot, easy to name, and easy to count. And here are some oceans that you might already know the names of. But there are half oceans, almost oceans, once oceans, like the Iramanga Sea and the West Interior Seaway and the Trans-Saharan Seaway. You might find, bones of sea creatures in those desert places now. And oceans in between. Remember to measure those too. You should flip this over. So it might help to draw a number line along its surface or through its depths. Imagine it's upright. And if there are any octonauts out there, you would know that here's the sunlight zone, and then the midnight zone, and then the twilight zone, and so on and so forth, all the way down to 6,000 meters and beyond. And my older twin loves this page most of all, is the one that he turns to all the time, and he has learned the names of every single sea creature on this page. And the ones I like most are the ones that rhyme. So here we have a mahi mahi, and here we have a mola mola, and here we have a humu humu upu upu apua'a. And if you're an octonaut, you would know that too. Don't worry if your lines aren't straight. Lines often aren't. They can spiral and spike into corners and curves, throwing our world into endless combinations of shapes and forms. You'll notice that the ocean rarely stays the same. It changes with time and temperature and terrain. It changes with the pull of the moon, the path of the wind, the pivoting of the earth. Each new way you look at it is as important as the last. Be careful not to fall into the trap of measuring only one thing, when in fact the ocean is a many-splendored place and its dimensions will astound you. It holds big things and is held up by little things. And when I read this to little ones, I remind them that they are the little things that are holding us up. And while the biggest and the smallest of things can feel like worlds apart, the ocean always finds a way to add what it needs or take away what it must, or divide itself into clever parts and multiply in unexpected ways. Before you know it, you'll have found an equation, a formula, a theorem, which is really just a story of how one thing relates to another. Now let's take a peek and see if we can see some of this. So this is a little some coral spawn that's adding together to make the beginnings of a coral and the beginnings of a reef, which can be so huge in places that you can see it from outer space. This is a cleaner shrimp that's probably taking away some debris from the mouth of this groper. And these are some parrotfish that are actually biting into the staghorn coral. And what happens is that they poo it out, and that parrotfish poo is actually sand. And then there are starfish that divide, and anemone that divide and multiply to make new anemone. Anemone, I said. They say there are parts of the ocean that haven't been discovered yet, nor the treasures that dwell within them. I told you something was happening to that hat. So remember to make space for other questions, other problems, other possibilities. You may not be able to measure them now, but one day someone will. Along the way, you'll stumble through some challenges, cross out a few wrong answers, and realize your mistakes. It's okay. Not a single drop of the ocean is ever wasted. None of it disappears. It simply turns into what it needs to be next. Maybe the ocean is simply a way for you to get from one point to another, and what you're truly measuring is how far you've come. It's not easy measuring something like the ocean, but I like that you gave it your best. Because if you hadn't tried in the first place, you would never have worked out that the ocean is actually vast, boundless, infinite. That's the end of the story, but I do have a little author's note which says, "Hello, reader. Are you ready to do some measuring? Let's start with this book. Using a ruler, a string, or just your hands, measure its length, its width, and its height." This book, like most things, has 3 dimensions, which means that it also has volume, the amount of space that it takes up in your world. Other things might take up the same space but have very different measurements. Imagine this book were made out of rock. The dimensions would stay the same, but it would have more weight. What if it were made of water? Would it keep its shape? How would you measure something that drips and flows, or something that you can't see or feel, like a book made of air? Math and other sciences help you solve these interesting problems by using numbers and units to describe how an object behaves. Every problem you solve might yield a formula, a set of rules you can use to arrive at the right answer. Formulas are special because they hold true even when you exchange one value for another. Now it's time for me to tell you a secret. This book is actually one big formula, a set of rules that help you think about things that are difficult to measure, like the ocean. Try it for yourself. Whenever you see the words written in blue, and we're going to try a little bit of it together, replace them with other words. And we are going to talk about courage because Danielle talked about those children that held a press conference at Al Shifa Hospital. And I feel that they're very brave. So let's try it out. Courage can be difficult to measure. You can't lift it onto scale to see how heavy it is. You can't tie a string around it to see how wide it grows. You might be able to scoop it out cup by cup. But you need a very big bucket to calculate its volume. And there are half courages and almost courage and one's courage and courages in between. Remember to measure those too. And on it goes. So that's it from me.
It was really wonderful, Inda. Thank you. And your art is really vibrant and delightful,
Well, thank you.
as are you. Um, and by the way, y'all, Inda is doing so many different things. A big part, I mean, one of the founders and doers of Coffees for Gaza, which is a wonderful art initiative to donate for families in Gaza. Also just started Stretch Your Shelf. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Um,
Yeah. So do I have time to talk a little bit about Coffees for Gaza and Stretch Your Shelf?
yes, and then we have at least one question. I have one about your creative work or your other
Oh,
creative.
okay, cool. All right. So Coffees for Gaza is basically just a bunch of us that started off a few months ago when we started noticing each other's posts. A lot of us are artists, not all of us are artists, but quite a lot of us are. I think because art is such an impactful medium that you notice when you express your artivism to express solidarity. So we found each other, and then Sarah, who's a half Palestinian, half Greek lady in Sydney, Australia, contacted us and said, "What can we do for these families? We're getting GoFundMe requests left, right, and center. Everything feels so scattered. How about we band together? We have a list of families and we promote them once a week, and we get everybody to just skip a coffee that week and pay that $5 or whatever it is towards this family. Maybe we can make a difference." And to a certain extent, we are making a difference. We wish we could do more. And in wishing so, we start coming up with all sorts of different projects. Like Peacetober just happened, where we were drawing to a prompt every day in October. We're going to have a Peacetober art auction, so look out for that. I'll share Copies for Gaza Instagram so you can look out for that. And then we have another secret project that we're about to tell the world about very, very soon. So that's really cool. And then amidst all of that, I decided community was keeping me afloat, whether it's Story Sunbirds or Copies for Gaza. And obviously, I'm a writer, I'm a reader, I really love books. And I wanted to start a project that would also have a community within it. And that was Stretch Your Shelf. So it's kind of like an online book club. Where there's a monthly theme and we talk about different kinds of books within that theme. But for November, we're talking all about Palestine. So it's really blown out of proportion because we're going to be talking about Palestine books every single day with lots of live events every week. So yes, so I need to sleep, to be honest with you.
Get that sense, and but I know how it goes. But yes, yeah, just hats off to you for everything.
Thank you.
So it's interesting. You use the phrase "keep community keeps us afloat," which could not be more true. And so we have one other question, but I'm curious first, what the connection is between the way you integrate science and the ocean and being a doctor with the deeper meaning of this book, How to Measure the Ocean. What is your
Yeah.
sort of mission around
Oh, I think, well, a lot of my stories will kind of has seeds from my own life, and a huge part of my life now is obviously my children, and they are like my muse. And my little girl, she's 9 now, but when she was about 4 and we used to love to go to the beach, it just sort of like lit me up to see how much she enjoyed it. And it reminded me of how much I enjoy it as well. So it's kind of like amplifying our enjoyment of nature. And my husband, her dad, also so really really loves that as well. And she would be so curious about everything. She was a huge Octonauts fan, so we learned about sea creatures together. And then she said this thing, because she was learning about math and counting and stuff. She said, "You know what? The thing I love about math, the thing I love about numbers is that it goes on and on and on forever." And I was like, "That's so simple." But it's so true, and it kind of like it opens up this whole, thing about limitations, about possibilities, about how can we tackle something that on the surface looks very, very difficult. And yeah, so I kind of went on a tangent on that and decided to kind of really make it about the ocean, but also pique people's, or especially young ones' curiosities as they read it with their big ones.
that? Yeah, that's really beautiful. The metaphor of the ocean and all the different ways that you stretch it and measure it. And I also just have to tell you that my late father loved the ocean, and his favorite fish was the humu humu nupu nupu apua.
Yes. Yeah, the English name is triggerfish, which I think is not as fun. So it's humu humu upu wapa.
One of the questions, first of all, Dawn is wanting the Instagram for Stretch the Shelf, or Stretch Your Shelf, which maybe
Yes.
later you could put in with everything.
Yes.
Alex will
Yep.
transcribe. And then just want to give a comment. Erica is saying, as an art teacher, I adore this book and we're looking for it. I also told my Palestinian and allied students about Peacetober in case they wanted to
Oh,
participate. That's really cool.
yay,
Um,
awesome. Thank you so much.
and then one person is asking, any advice for those who want to be an illustrator author for their own stories? This is an adult tuning in who wants to know.
So I came to art really late in life. And this might evolve into another project for next year, an art course maybe for people like me. So I started drawing, or really finding the courage to draw, when I was I don't know, mid-30s or something like that. I think I grew up totally thinking this is science and I'm gonna go through the science route because I want to be a doctor and I like, biology and stuff. And this is art. And art is for these really super talented people who were born with God-given talent, and I can admire art, but I can't do it. And it took me ages, and it took a lot of sort of mental gymnastics to kind of figure out, actually, that's not true. I can learn it just like I can learn anything else. And then I found out that really, really talented artists, Hatem being one of them, because I've seen him do this, they use erasers. Did you know that they use erasers, that they rub out the lines? Because I thought it just flowed out of their hands like magic. Um, and then I realized that artists were fallible human beings and I can give it a shot. So I would say give it a shot. Just start looking for, there's so many tutorials online, and that's how I started as well. Just like with writing, I always keep a notebook with me to scribble things down. Keep a sketchbook with you and just do something every single day. And in the beginning, it's not going to look amazing, but neither is the first draft of any writing. And you just keep going and keep going and keep going, and surround yourself with people who are either on the same path or just a little bit ahead of you, and find fun things to do like Peacetober, or art challenges and things like that.
Thank you. And that's similar to what Hatem said. And it's so fun to see friends and comrades today, and you are one of them, and we're just so grateful that you're here. And are you giving away a book today? A signed book?
So, so the thing is, postage from here is really bad. It's shockingly,
Okay, never mind.
I've tried before and it failed miserably. So I'm afraid I'll look into alternatives. So I won't say no just yet, but yeah.
I did not mean to put you on the spot. Yes, international postage is really unbelievable. But I will segue to say that we are doing a fundraiser for Middle East Children's Alliance, and some folks are able to handle that postage from where they are. And those books will be signed that you'll be entered to win. So if you're able to give today to Mecca for Peace, everything's in the chat. And then you email us the donation receipt, and you'll be put in a raffle and giveaway for lots of these books. And we're just really grateful that you were here, Inda, and that all of you are here tuning in and caring and showing care and standing with the children of Gaza the way you do in everything you do. Thank you, Inda, for
And
being
thank you to you too. You've been absolutely amazing.
here. Yeah, well, community keeps us afloat, right? As you said.